Thanks, Richie, for hosting us and for having this event. It's always great to be here and talk with you. It's great to see some people here who actually are working with us right now. And hopefully get to speak with a bunch of you more, because we're here to help with whatever your needs may be. And so today what we're going to talk about is auditing the health of your franchise organization. So essentially, a little bit about us, as Richie was giving us a great introduction, but we are the top franchise consulting firm in America, North America. This is the 6th year in a row voted by our peers. So we do take a lot of pride in that and the quality work we do give to our clients. Everyone who works at our franchise group, as far as the production side of things, has either been CEO at a franchise company or executive, or they've been a franchisor themselves. So we carry, we like to say, hundreds of years worth of experience, but everybody's been in franchising for a couple of decades at least on average. We do have a large breadth of what we do. As I like to say, we do pretty much everything except for the legal work when it comes to franchising. So we help with strategic planning, we help with new training and operations manuals, implementation, as well as marketing materials and collateral. And we have franchise experience across 50 different countries. Pretty sure Antarctica is the only place that we haven't put a franchise quite yet. And we have numerous different accolades to that. And to that end, we're going to take a look at your franchise sales process and the cycle. So it's a pretty holistic process. We have two halves to it. The first half we'll talk about is going to be the sales side, and so forming the message and the process and ensuring that that is tight. And then coming into the next part, which is keeping them in the system, is the support side and how robust and tight those materials need to be in order for you to be able to successfully have franchisees who can eventually get you to validation. So as the circles will show you, just as an example, essentially if you have any of these pieces that are missing within the process, unfortunately at some point it means that you're going to have a hard time validating. So every single one of these is very important when you're talking about the franchise sales cycle and getting people through the door, getting them to sign, and then while they're with you, what kind of documentation you have, your support materials, etc. So because validation is vital, we do have ways with our company that we help with this, but you can do this yourself as well, obviously. But you do want to make sure that you have franchisees that are going to be great for validating your system because they're your biggest evangelists. Ways that we do this include, at this point, phone surveys. I believe we still do electronic surveys, most certainly. We can also mystery shop the franchisees, essentially, to see how they feel about the system. And while we do that, we put together responses. So when you do something like this, you do have to be prepared to listen to their responses. There's going to be great ones, there's probably going to be some not so great ones. So be prepared, because you're going to act accordingly on that information. As has been said several times today, the Franchise Advisory Council, I'm not going to talk too much about it because you've heard about it a million times at this point, but it is good to have. We do recommend to everybody that we help develop at some point. You do need to put one together, usually for the fact that if you don't, they're going to come together at some point, and so either you can be in control of when your franchisees want changes or at least need to tell you things, or they can start to do it themselves, and that's a bigger problem on your hands. Obviously, validation also helps with scaling your system. So essentially, eventually you're going to have more buying power. Your system's going to scale better. And so validation is the most important piece of all this. So when you're auditing your core strategy, it starts with the concept, obviously, when it comes to your concept of value proposition. On top of that, you're also going to want to show a strong value proposition because you're going to have other people in the field with you. So what's going to set you apart from them? You're selling the sizzle, not the steak, as we like to say. So essentially, a bunch of you might be selling that steak, but what makes yours different? On top of that, like I said, you have to understand the competition and what is that competitive advantage going to be that separates you from other people in your industry. And then also making sure that your return is going to be commensurate to the risk that they're going to take. So if it's a high investment, you're obviously going to want to see that return back to them. Also, Me Too is not a marketing strategy. I will talk about this a little bit later as well with marketing materials. Essentially to say that your competitors might have something going on with the way they market that's successful for them, may not work for you though. So make sure that you're avoiding that type of strategy. And then between having the marketing plan, message and materials, advertising expenditures, and sales process, these are areas that you sometimes have people start to jump to conclusions on. So they think that they've been doing this long enough. One of your franchise salespeople, might have to skip over a step because they think that they got it in the bag. But if, again, you miss one of these pieces, you might be missing something, and all of a sudden you have unhappy prospective franchisees, and it goes back to validation again, where you're not going to have people who validate you well. So when we're making decisions about correcting a sales and marketing problem, you're not going to get the most reliable information, essentially because there might be people looking out for themselves, blaming other people. Maybe they just don't have the best numbers themselves to see what's going on. So in these examples, we usually say, you have your competitors, are they beating you to franchise sales? Is your close rate low? You might consider it to be low. You do have to ask yourself, however, though, is it truly low? Is your industry size? Who are you expecting? How many people are you expecting to actually buy into your franchise? How big is the investment? Because if it's a larger one, obviously you're not going to have as many people who are looking to invest that kind of money, or may not have it. Are you recognizable to people? If you're in a new market, are you really going to get a lot of leads because they don't know who you are quite yet? Your other two examples in this, your salesperson says your leads aren't good. And on the other side of things, the franchise marketing person says the salesperson can't close. So it's kind of like the meme of Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man and just blaming the people on the other. So it's easy to jump to the wrong conclusions, and you may not make a decision that's going to solve the problem. So how do we tell what isn't working? So you have to have data, and where do we get the data from? So in this example that we have here, when you're looking at your key performance indicators, you find that a salesperson has a very low percentage of people coming in for a face-to-face. However, they have a very high close rate for the people that they actually do meet. And a problem with that might be is that they're trying to sell it over the phone rather than getting them into the face-to-face discovery net. And it's very important we want them to come to the discovery net. So salespeople who are trying to get all the facts on the phone, really just try to get them amped up right before they get there, you're going to have a bigger problem when it comes to them coming in. In a similar example, you find that your salesperson seems to have a high drop-off rate between the first and second call. And the issue with that tends to be with setting timing. So there's a certain process, set of steps that you should have in your franchise sales process. If your franchise salesperson can't articulate that to the prospect, then you're going to have a lot of confusion in people who decide they're just not going to go forward because they don't know what they're supposed to receive, what they're supposed to do, and essentially what the agenda is in the franchise sales process. So this is a lot of information, but this is a typical franchise sales funnel. At the top, obviously, we have where your resources come from. And as it's going further down, obviously the numbers will start to get lower and lower as to who's in it. But as you can see from some of the numbers here, and all this data is up to date as of this last year with Franchise Update, you do want to see where your money's going, though, because average cost per lead is right now $253, and so that's across all leads, obviously. But you also want to see, based on timing, based on the percentage of people who are moving on to the next stage, and ultimately, where is the closing coming from? So, as you can see here for Franchise Update, about 65 to 75% of people who close made it to the face-to-face. So, like the prior example that we had, if you have somebody selling over the phone, they're missing out because they don't get to actually come and experience the concept and then make a final decision. So those people might wash out. So this is the most stunning number you can see on this one as well. This is the average cost right now to have a franchisee come from lead to close. So as you're looking at, some of you who are developing into franchises right now, when you're looking at your franchise fee, this is really where you want to focus. You're going to consider your franchise fees recouping this nearly $12,000 that you're going to spend ultimately getting them to become a franchisee of yours. And to address the close rates too, like I said earlier in the last slide, you might think they're too low. The average still actually is only about 2%, and that's even with the best franchises. So for every 100 people, maybe 2 of them might become franchisees. That's what that rate might be. So taking a look at the different sales problems you might want to diagnose if you're having issues in the funnel. Referral leads and publicity leads are your cheapest leads. So with referrals, they're free. And with publicity, it just depends on what wires you're going out through. But if you're having problems with getting people through those leads, it might be a concept issue. And so addressing the messaging coming through that concept, or with referrals, do you have franchisees who want to refer out other people? Those are things you have to address. When it comes to high lead costs, so we still have print trade shows. You still get leads from that in different places, but print not so common anymore. Direct mail, obviously, same thing. But your internet leads obviously are the most important here. And if your cost per lead with your internet leads are too high, it might be where you're putting that money as far as selecting the media that you put it into. So if they're not making it to Discovery Day, your marketing materials may not be up to par or just are not convincing enough to these people that they want to make it to the next step. So they've gotten all the information and they just decided at that point that it's time to move on to go elsewhere. So it might indicate we need to take a look at those marketing materials and revise what's going on. If it's the brokers, so broker confidence is a big thing. If they're not confident in your concept, they're not going to sell it. So if you're having problems with brokers, it might be that they don't feel comfortable with your concept. So you have to take a look at the messaging, the value proposition, and what is it that you're offering that, what would incentivize them to incentivize somebody to want to look at your franchise. And because the average timing should take 12 to 4 weeks, there could be a whole bunch of issues here. But yeah, the urgency, setting the agenda like I said before, so are you selling through the phone? Are you just not being articulate about what needs to happen on their part versus what your part involves? Does your salesperson just not have good closing skills? That's also another important thing to look at. Ultimately, if you can't get them down to closing or not getting enough people down to closing, it's the validation is either a problem, which again is the big topic of the day, or it's sales skills from your salespeople. So various media-specific marketing, sales statistics, all of this, it's all a part of one piece of the puzzle that we have to look at when it takes to correcting action. So when it comes to the concept itself, I'm only going to pick out a few pieces out of this because obviously there's a lot. And I will preface and say that if you do want a copy of the slide deck, I'm more than happy to get your email or business card so you can take a look through this because it is a lot of information. But if we take a look at the concept itself, it might be high unit investment. Does it look and feel modern? Does it seem dated? Is it something that people are attracted to? Are the franchisees, again, are they not validating you well? Some of those symptoms you're going to see are going to be that you just don't have great PR, you have objections that you just can't overcome when people ask you questions, and also prospects just go away, they go ghost. And so some things that it could be are your concept up to date? Does it feel modern to them? Have they been looking at other contracts from other competitors? That might possibly be something that they're also vetting. Eventually, too, if you're looking at lost sales, who are they going with? Because that might also indicate some places that you can improve. Same thing with lead generation. It might just be that you're not generating in the same place, in the right places. The media mix isn't the greatest. Your ad spend, either you're not spending enough or you're spending too much in the wrong places. And also, is it your target audience that you're actually appealing to? And you'll see this through either high lead costs and low close rates, and maybe you just don't have a lot of quality leads coming through the door as you'd like. So the ways in which we would take a look at this are comparing your historical numbers versus what the norms in the media should be, performance versus your competitors, as well as just taking surveys of franchisees within your system as well as competitors to see what there is. As far as franchise marketing materials go, are you looking at your target audience? What is the messaging that you're giving them about the franchise? Also, what is the quality of the marketing materials themselves? Again, with more tactile types of materials such as brochures and print, obviously the quality of that can kind of indicate subconsciously to somebody is this a good franchise to be a part of or not. But also the quality of the website and what the ads look like when they're being shown on, say, internet leads and such. And you'll see those come through similarly to your concept itself, where your PR doesn't look great, you have a low application rate, you're just not getting the sales that you need when you're going to competitors. So as far as what we would diagnose with that, we look at what your best practices for marketing are. What is your message, and do you need to revise the message? And on top of that, what are your rates versus what the norm should be? And then the same thing with the sales process and technique. How are the leads being handled? Are they being followed up appropriately? Are the sales skills with your salespeople up to snuff? Do they need to be trained better? On top of that, are they motivated too? So is it that if they can get people through the door, their incentives are worth it? You'll see that again through low application rates, low close rates, as well as going back to brokers, you won't get as many leads from brokers either. And same thing, we take a look at what those norms should be versus what your history are, as well as mystery shopping with Salesforce. Also just taking a look at data like what the leads per salesperson are, as well as the sales per salesperson. So when you confirm the problems, say it's a unit investment, the look and feel's outdated, value propositions maybe not up to snuff, then you're going to see that as what we do as a company and what you can also do just internally is re-engineer your value proposition. Maybe you just need to redo the concept itself, rebrand, and just really kind of freshen things up. Again, the Franchise Advisory Council, as pointed out again, listen to the Franchise Advisory Council that you might have, or consider starting one, just so that we can get that input about the concept and make sure that everybody's on the same page. As far as lead generation goes, this one, it's always great to go with a professional company that can help with this, especially when they're experts in the field, because they'll be the ones to be able to help to share where's the best place to put your spend hours, where should you be putting advertisements, do you need to revise what the message is, and they're able to put your leads in places where you're going to be able to maximize your pay-per-click and or social media based on that. Marketing materials, rewrite it, redesign it, make sure everything's up to speed. If it's based in technology, make it look like it is up to date with technology as well. These are all things that will at least help with attracting people based on the quality of your marketing materials. And then when you found that your sales process needs improving, it's going through your sales process, mapping it out, checking for leakage, essentially finding where you can either improve your sales force or make sure that your brokers are also on the same page as far as the improvements you made. And the vast majority of the time that we're taking a look at these kind of things, it's never one certain thing. It's always just a lot of little pieces that are causing this to happen. So you can always improve things and it'll incrementally improve those rates. So as far as marketing effectiveness, finding your prospects and defining them as narrowly as possible is important. So in these cases, you could survey competitors, figure out who they're going with as far as their particular franchisees. If you have an idea of who your ideal franchisee would be as well, it's good to have that narrowed down as much as possible. Also survey your top franchisees, because those are the qualities you might be looking for as well and more. Also the lost opportunities, why is it that they got away? Blind surveys of competitors are always helpful. Using social media to identify franchisee backgrounds, always a good tool, especially because people still post a lot of stuff on social media. So as you're learning who your franchisees are, this is important because the relationship that you're going to have with them, obviously you want to make sure that who they are is going to reflect upon your brand as well. So it's just good to know who they are in the background as well as their public face too. And the other couple here are doing surveys of competitors and analyzing competitive messaging. So again, as I said, and I'll say it again, avoid Me Too marketing, but you should figure out what strengths that they have that you might be able to also take on yourselves, or is there something you can differentiate with to be able to set yourself apart. And I've said this too with our roundtable, but when you're spending on lead spend, repurpose the bottom 10 to 20% of your marketing spend on a regular basis, because if it's not working in one place, you can put more money into the place that is working. And change is constant. So this is to talk about essentially with your franchise sale being 14 weeks on average, where you're getting your lead sources from does matter, because you might be somewhere where it seems like you have a stable lead flow and things are working great and you don't want to leave there because you're spending that kind of money that it's just optimal and everything's great. Unfortunately though, you may be going there and you've already basically run the well dry without even knowing it. So by the time that you're still running that campaign, you're going to start to see diminishing returns. So it's good to, again, just take a refreshed look at where your sources are, who you're using, and essentially repurposing your spend, because even if you do have a place that looks steady, unfortunately, it may not necessarily be that way even a few months later. So as we like to stick to things that aren't broke, sometimes you actually have to fix them. And so when we take a look at this, we actually take a look at the cost per lead, as I've been mentioning, rather than the cost per sale, because then at least you're seeing the quality of the lead that's coming through for what you spend rather than who's actually getting through. You also want to take a look at your marketing materials. And so with marketing materials, it's not consumer marketing. You're obviously appealing to a different type of person. You should obviously not be Me-Too marketing, so just because your competitors are doing things a certain way and it's getting them people through the door, you emulating them is not going to give you the same results. If you're making the 5 sales, these are ways to appeal to them. So are you telling them, go into business for yourself, buy a franchise? Are you investing in the industry that you're already working in? You just get to be in it now as an owner. And also invest in a specific franchise if you've been out there with brand recognition. Also, is the timing right? Especially in the last few years, that's been a big thing well, at least with us at least, and COVID too, where people decided after layoffs and such, they had a little bit of money, and so they wanted to invest in the franchise. So timing is also a very important message to bring. If you haven't had your materials professionally developed, you can always come to someone like us. We can help to review them. If you have them through us, then we thank you for that. But yeah, always have your stuff then reviewed by a professional, also by Richie and his team, because it does have to be looked at from the legal side sometimes too. There you have it. So this is really more of an example because it's a lot of bars to look at. So essentially, this is leads by media. Franchise update had this pretty recently updated. But as you can see, the majority of leads that are coming in for franchises come from the internet. So through pay-per-click and other means, social media. Second to that is your franchise opportunity website. So when we talk about looking at the bottom 10 to 20% spend, say, if anybody does TV or radio or direct mail or this, if you're spending money on that, it might be best to repurpose it back towards something like internet because that's where the lead flow is coming from. And so, a more granular example of what's coming in through the internet, your franchise opportunity website, even if it's not the first place that prospective franchisees look, it will be the place that they go to just check you out and really get more information about you. So, secondarily to, say, pay-per-click or social media marketing or SEO, your franchise opportunity website is important because that's where people are going to go visit. So you should have it also taken a look like by professionals who've been doing franchise marketing websites for a while because you do want to make sure your website's performing well. You want to make sure that your SEO keyword rankings are up to date, your social media presence, LinkedIn profile, and I'll say LinkedIn profile actually is a lot more prevalent as I've seen too. But make sure that all of your collateral is together and reviewed by professionals because about 70% of your initial leads are coming from the internet and about 99% of them that are serious are probably looking at your website in some detail. So after all the marketing materials and your value proposition and everything up to this point, we have the sales process. And the franchise sales process is very unique because you have to tell somebody, one, that they have to quit their job. You have to tell them they're not going to have any more benefits, paid vacations, retirement account. You have to have them trust somebody that they've never met before as far as a business model. They have to invest their life savings. And they have no experience potentially in this business as well. So you have to tell them that. And they're also making a lifetime commitment, which 10 years is not a lifetime, but it's a very long time. And you can't tell them how much money they're going to make. So this is an example of the franchise sales process. Just a good way to see from here's where they come in from the leads all the way to closing. And you can see at what various stages they, when you set an agenda with your salespeople, this is what they should be setting expectations for your prospects. Ultimately, you want to get them to discovery day because then from there you can get them through the process after asking all the questions and having reviewed the FDD and such. You don't want to put too many or any ditches into this process, mainly because any sort of hoops that have to be jumped through create leakage. So you start to lose people, say, in between the confidential request form and the review, suddenly, there's a longer wait than what they're expecting for, and suddenly they're kind of suspect, why have you decided to do that? Maybe the personal interview doesn't go so well. Just all these extra hoops are really what's going to put a hitch in the process. So, at our franchise group, when we help franchisors with this type of work, we do help with mystery shopping sales team. So as you can see up here, just taking a look at the various things we can help with. questionnaires and disclaimers. So in some places that can happen, others when we're doing mystery shopping, it can be done over the phone and in other ways. But we're taking a look at the different things that they're doing to kind of help to make sure that they're doing the franchise sales properly. Is their phone technique well? Are their sales skills actually good? Are they establishing rapport? Are they giving an agenda, defining goals? As far as follow-up goes, setting agendas, are they also able to represent the concept as well as what's in the FDD effectively? And ultimately, are they able to sell it at discovery day versus selling it over the phone? Again, very important there. You want to make sure your documentation is adequate, and establishing consistent KPIs will help to show whether or not your sales force is working the way it should. So this is another example of the marketing and sales audit process, just showing our different steps that we take when we're helping franchisors to go through and just make sure that there's no gaps in any of their sales and marketing materials and or techniques. So we've gotten through what gets them through the door, and so the blue half is what keeps them. So the support and quality control side of things, this is where we have tools for making sure that they're felt supported on opening day and beyond. What are the goals that you have as a franchise versus franchisees? Seeing where you stand right now versus where you want to be, as well as financial analysis. And so we'll talk about the operations manual, as that's the most important piece of support that you can give somebody. It's a sales tool, it's also a training tool, and it's there to help reduce liability for you, the franchisor. It's an essentially legal document because it can be updated faster than your FDD can be. It's been spoken to a few times today, I believe. So just speaking about if there's changes that have to be made a little bit more immediately than what go into the FDD, you at least have the ability to push it almost immediately because I think most operations manuals are online at this point. So as long as it's been reviewed properly. Again, also have your manual reviewed professionally. Make sure that you have somebody who does make updates to the ops manual so that way it's understood that if there's anything that needs changing, it can be done. And as we all know, a good operations manual can help you avoid litigation, and a bad one is your worst nightmare. So you want your operations manual to have a few things in it. You don't want to be too prescriptive, but you also want it to spell everything out. The way I like to put it is that if you have a franchisee, you don't want them to be calling every 5 minutes with questions that could be answered within the ops manual. So your support should be there to answer the big problems or address the big problems, whereas the operations manual should allow them to solve problems on their own that, again, take up little bits of 5 minutes every so often. So in that, you show your brand standards. You should also have best practices and recommendations. You want it languaged in a way that it avoids joint employership issues, and you also want it to avoid potential areas of negligence, especially when it comes to HR. And of course, we put this in here talking about, so if you jump from the 42nd floor and you're at the 27th, you may not think that there's a problem still. But I'll just say that essentially, just because things look fine on paper at one moment doesn't mean that at some point down the road, if you haven't addressed something in your operations materials, that it might become a problem later. And so this is our pathway we take for helping to develop operations manuals when we do reviews as well. Essentially, very hands-on. We work with the stakeholders in the company as well as anyone who's a subject matter expert to ensure that everything is written down, documented, and put in a way that everybody can easily understand. And then on top of that, making sure that it gets reviewed legally so that way it's, like I said, avoiding some of those litigation issues if you've worded it properly. So that's where it comes in. If you have an ops manual draft, that's where Richie and his team come to look at it. So beyond the operations manual, other things to take a look at, training programs. Some of you were just at the round table here a second ago, we talked about this. But you're going to have good training programs in place, especially as you're growing faster. One thing that we do that helps with different franchises is we have training the trainer, which essentially is a protocol where you can train your franchisees and then they're the ones who can then disperse that information out amongst their own employees. So that helps to avoid the joint employer issues as well, but then it also reduces the cost of training from you, the franchisor. Video is also a good idea for that. We also have internally a learning management system that we help to manage that folks take advantage of, but online training because you can push it down to the lowest levels of the franchise, and again, you're not having to involve yourself personally with franchisee employees. But everything is there. You can actually track people's progress. If it's something that you need to have a lot of compliance based in, you know that your franchisee and their employees are following compliance and they're scoring well on, say, the compliance tests they have to take. And we put this in here to say we don't cover legal documentation. So when it comes to FDD review and things like that, when you're looking into the sales process, that's something you would do with Richie or your attorney. But you have to do legal updates every year. So at that same point, it's always just good practice to have your marketing materials and your operations manual and any other things that need legal review done at the same time. So when we help with clients with their goals in franchising, we reverse engineer where they want to start and get them to that point by going backwards. So establishing your long-term goals, you don't want to try to establish value from growth. You want to make sure that you have solid goals in place based on where you want to see yourself in the future. So with reverse engineering, we can help to do that, and doing the same with your franchisees is a great practice to have. You should also be an annual planning process, just so that way you can review any goals you may have, any modifications you might have to make, and just see what progress has been. And that's where the gap analysis comes in. So this is an example of the sales that you want to make in about 5 years. So say you want to sell your franchise system for $20 million in 5 years. You're seeing that the selling average is about 15 times EBIT, and your 5-year earnings is, if you divide by 15, is 1.3 million. So then you have to take a look and see, okay, I have 30,000 per franchise as far as royalties go. You net that to 10,000. So doing the math, if you want to get to that 1.3 million, you need to have 130 franchisees. So that's a way to take a look and just see what is your goal based on the numbers. How do you have to get there? Reverse engineering is a really good way to do that. When we work with clients, and these are all just quick steps on that, this is a hockey stick that we create as well of what points should look like over that 5-year period. So say you have 50 units in 5 years. This is when you should start to consider putting extra staff on. So when it comes to salespeople, at what points do you put those people on? Field reps to help with going out and doing support, and then actual internal support staff come up after that. So it's good to have goals like these just to see where you can do some of the work at the beginning, but when you need to start to delegate it because your system is scaling. Additionally to that, just extra space in marketing personnel to help with that. And with opening, the faster that you can get them open, the faster they're able to generate revenue, and that's the faster the system grows and you have happy franchisees. So essentially a lot of what you do should be geared toward ensuring that not only are your franchisees well supported with materials, but you also give them a fast track to open successfully. And so taking a look at the onboarding materials you have and taking a look at how you communicate opening, these are various things that we can help with, as well as you should do internally just to make sure that your opening team knows their role, what do the franchisees expect when it comes to opening their locations, how are they going to be supported within that time period, are they going to have all their compliance in place, a vast line of things to have to consider, but all of them very important because all of them help to ensure that if they're opening fast, they're going to be profitable quicker. And then this is an example of how we do the audit process. So we're not even going to go through the whole thing, but again, I can certainly have this deck set if you want to see how it looks. But obviously, we can take a look at everything. We can also take a look at just a piece. And so it really just depends where your bottlenecks. You seem to have a lower lead flow. Is it that you're having attrition somewhere along the sales cycle? Or is it just that you need an update with your materials because maybe your materials seem dated or something's not resonating with these prospective franchisees? We're able to come in and take a look at all this and ensure that everything's up to speed or that whatever needs revising can be given its best quality work. So again, I'd like to thank Richie for the time today and being able to speak with all of you. As you can see here, if you want, I'm happy to take a look or my colleagues take a look at anything you have as far as operations manuals go and marketing materials. Feel free to give me your card and I can be in touch with you. And on top of that, if you'd like a copy of the book our CEO wrote, it's a great book on franchising. I'm happy to get that your way as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions too.